Imagine waking up one morning and realizing the people around you aren't just eccentric, they irrational. Conversations that once seemed normal now sound like rehearsed scripts. People repeat slogans they barely understand. They defend ideas they've never questioned. And if you challenge them, even gently, they don't respond with curiosity. They respond with hostility. You pause, unsettled, and ask yourself, is it them? Or am I the one losing touch with reality? But then the days pass, and you notice it everywhere. On the news, in schools, on social media, at family gatherings. Logic is fading, replaced by blind emotion. Fear spreads faster than truth. Belief is no longer built on evidence, but on repetition, on the comfort of belonging to the herd. Slowly, you realize this isn't just a series of odd behaviors. It is something much larger. You are watching a society, perhaps even an entire world, drift into a kind of waking dream. This is the phenomenon known as mass psychosis, a collective detachment from reality. It's not new. History is filled with examples. Empires collapsing, nations tearing themselves apart, cultures consumed by hysteria and delusion. What makes it terrifying is not only how easily it spreads, but how invisible it feels to those inside it. The crowd doesn't see itself as hypnotized. The crowd believes you are the one who has gone mad. In the next 25 minutes, we will uncover how mass psychosis begins, how it takes hold, and why intelligent people surrender to it without realizing. We'll explore the psychological triggers that make entire societies vulnerable, the stages that lead from confusion to conformity, and the hidden mechanisms that turn ordinary people into participants of collective madness. Most importantly, you'll learn how to protect your own mind, how to recognize the signs before they consume you, and how to reclaim a clarity that no crowd can take away. Because the final key, the one we'll reach at the end of this video, is not simply about resisting the herd. It is about transcending the need for the herd altogether. And once you see this, you'll realize something profound. Being alone with truth is not isolation. It is freedom. So what exactly is mass psychosis? At its core, it is when large groups of people lose touch with reality, not through individual madness, but through collective belief. It's when societies fall into a trance, where lies are repeated so often they sound like truth, and where people act, not out of reason, but out of fear and conformity. Think about it. Human beings are not always rational creatures. Despite centuries of philosophy, despite access to science, history, and critical thought, we often behave like a flock of sheep, chasing shadows we don't understand. We've seen empires crumble, not from invasion, but from illusions that hollowed them from within. This isn't a modern discovery. In the 17th century, philosopher René Descartes warned that our senses could deceive us. But even he didn't imagine how deeply society as a whole could deceive itself. Centuries later, the psychiatrist Carl Jung explained how the human psyche, when cut off from purpose and meaning, becomes dangerously vulnerable to suggestion. When people lose touch with their inner compass, they begin to seek identity in the herd. And the herd, more often than not, is driven by fear, by propaganda, by the desperate need to belong. And we've all seen this. In the last few years alone, we've watched ordinary people repeating slogans they don't fully understand, promoting causes they've never researched, and lashing out at anyone who dares to ask questions. Is this intelligence? Is this progress? Or are we witnessing a slow unraveling of reason, a mental and spiritual collapse? The French thinker Gustave Le Bon, in his classic book The Crowd, described it perfectly. Individuals in a group lose their sense of responsibility. They stop thinking as independent adults and start behaving like children, emotional, impulsive, and easy to manipulate. That is the danger of mass psychosis. The more people surrender their critical thought, the easier it becomes to control them. This is not just a clinical term. It's a lived experience. It happens when people stop thinking for themselves and instead outsource their perception of reality to authority figures, to the media, or to whatever happens to be trending. So ask yourself honestly, how many of the opinions you hear every day are truly someone's own? And how many are simply echoes of what they've been told to believe? If mass psychosis is a trance, then what triggers it? How does an entire society slip into collective madness? The answer begins with fear. Fear is the fuel of mass psychosis. Fear disorients the mind, shuts down reason, and drives us to cling to the herd for safety, even if the herd is running toward a cliff. Carl Jung warned us that when the human psyche is cut off from meaning, when life feels empty of purpose or grounding, people become desperate for direction. And in that desperation, they turn outward, seeking identity in the crowd. The problem? The crowd is rarely led by wisdom. More often, it is driven by propaganda, hysteria, and the need to belong. Think of how easily fear can be amplified today. Social media, news cycles, cultural conflicts. It doesn't take much for a slogan to spread faster than truth, or for outrage to eclipse reason. People begin parroting words they don't understand, sharing headlines they haven't verified, and joining causes they haven't questioned. Why? Because the fear of isolation is greater than the fear of being wrong. Psychologists have shown this over and over. In the 1950s, Solomon Asch ran a famous experiment. He presented people with a simple task, matching the length of lines on a card. The correct answer was obvious. But when actors in the room deliberately gave the wrong answer, the real participants, under pressure, went along with the group. They denied the evidence of their own eyes just to avoid standing out. That is the seed of mass psychosis. It doesn't begin with dictators or monsters. It begins with ordinary people who are afraid to stand alone. Now amplify that across millions of individuals. Multiply it by the reach of social media, the emotional weight of manipulated news, the speed of modern communication, and you don't just have isolated conformity. You have a psychological virus spreading across entire nations. Fear creates the opening. Exhaustion deepens it. And soon, people aren't just surrendering their critical thought. They're defending the illusion, protecting it, even attacking those who dare to question it. That is the terrifying trigger of mass psychosis. Not ignorance, but the willful escape from reality. Mass psychosis doesn't descend like a storm all at once. It creeps in quietly, almost invisibly, through stages so subtle that most people don't even notice until they are fully immersed in it. It begins with disorientation. A culture starts to feel unstable, uncertain, even hollow. The stories people once believed no longer make sense, but nothing new rises to replace them. Trust in leaders begins to crumble. Institutions lose their credibility. Neighbors look at each other with suspicion. Life feels chaotic, and in this fog of confusion, the human mind begins to crave order. And here lies the danger. When people are desperate for clarity, they will accept even false order, because anything feels safer than uncertainty. Out of this confusion, a story emerges. It may come from the media, from the state, or from charismatic figures who promise answers. And at first it feels like relief. Finally, something simple. A villain to blame. A problem with a solution. A way to turn a chaotic world into black and white. But in this simplification, nuance disappears. Complexity is erased. Suddenly it is us versus them, good versus evil. And exhausted people, tired of questioning, stop thinking for themselves. They surrender their judgment to the story, not because it's true, but because it's easy. Soon, silence takes over. Not because everyone believes the narrative, but because everyone thinks everyone else believes it. People hesitate to speak, afraid of ridicule, afraid of being the only one who disagrees. So they nod along, they stay quiet, they conform. Psychologists call this pluralistic ignorance, the illusion of consensus. And in this illusion, the story gains power. The lie grows stronger than truth itself, not through evidence, but through repetition and silence. Then comes the turn to aggression. Once the illusion is accepted, those who question it are no longer just dissenters. They are seen as dangerous. The crowd begins to defend the narrative, not with logic, but with hostility. Questioning becomes heresy. Silence feels safer than truth. People begin mocking, censoring, even punishing those who refuse to conform. And what started as a longing for order transforms into a weaponized obedience, enforced not only by authorities, but by the people themselves. Yet no illusion lasts forever. Reality, heavy and stubborn, always pushes back. The contradictions begin to show. People feel the tension between what they are told and what they experience. The cracks widen, and in the quiet of their own thoughts, a whisper returns. Is this really true? At first, it's subtle, an unease, a moment of doubt. But once the question is asked, the spell begins to weaken. That whisper grows into curiosity, and curiosity becomes awakening. And yet, this awakening is not gentle. It is painful. To wake up means realizing that much of what you believed, defended, even fought for, was built on illusion. It means admitting how easily the human mind can be deceived, how fear can lead entire populations astray. But it is only through this shaking, through this disillusionment, that clarity is born. The psychoanalyst Viktor Frankl, who survived the Nazi concentration camps, wrote that survival was not about being the strongest, but about having a sense of meaning. Those who had a deeper anchor, a why, could endure even the worst madness without losing themselves. And that is the final truth about these stages. Mass psychosis begins in fear, it grows in silence, it erupts in hostility. But it can only end when individuals rediscover a truth deeper than the crowd. Why is conformity so powerful? Why do intelligent people, capable of reason, abandon what they know to be true simply to follow the crowd? The answer lies deep in human psychology. From the beginning of our species, survival depended on belonging. To be cast out from the tribe was to face death alone. That ancient fear still lives in us, long after the lions and wolves have disappeared. Today, it's not predators we fear, it's rejection, isolation, judgment, the terror of being the odd one out. In the 1950s, psychologist Solomon Asch designed a famous experiment to test this. Participants were asked to match the length of simple lines on a card. The correct answer was obvious. But when actors in the room deliberately gave the wrong answer, the real participants, under pressure, did the same. They denied the evidence of their own eyes just to blend in. The need to belong overpowered the truth in front of them. This is the seed of mass psychosis. Ordinary people abandoning reason, not because they are stupid, but because they are afraid of standing alone. Multiply that instinct across millions, amplify it through media, and you don't just have private conformity, you have collective delusion. The German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche once warned that madness is rare in individuals, but in groups, in nations, in ages, it is the rule. And we see it everywhere today. Someone calmly presents evidence, logic, or reason, and instead of listening, the crowd erupts with rage, mockery, or censorship. Not because the argument is false, but because it threatens the illusion that gives them safety. This is not stupidity in the simple sense. Many caught in mass delusion are educated, accomplished, even brilliant. But intelligence without awareness is like a ship without a compass. You can travel far and still be utterly lost. That is why today we are surrounded not by ignorance, but by educated confusion. A society overflowing with information, yet starving for wisdom. So if mass psychosis spreads through fear, silence, and conformity, what is the antidote? How do we protect our minds when the world around us feels like it's unraveling? The first step is awareness. You cannot fight what you do not see. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." The same is true for societies. If we don't recognize the forces shaping our thoughts, we will be shaped by them without ever realizing. That awareness begins by building an inner firewall. Question the assumptions you've been handed. Ask yourself, why do I believe what I believe? Who benefits from me believing this? What if I'm wrong? What if everyone else is? Even a single honest question can pierce the fog of mass hypnosis. The second step is to master emotional reactivity. Collective madness thrives on triggered minds. The more reactive you are, the easier you are to control. When a headline enrages you, when a comment makes you afraid, pause. Ask yourself, why am I reacting this way? Who wants me to feel this? Emotional discipline is not suppression. It is sovereignty, the ability to choose your response rather than be driven like cattle by manipulation. The third step is meaning. Fear enslaves, but meaning liberates. Nietzsche once said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." If you are anchored to something deeper, a philosophy, a spiritual practice, a devotion to truth, then no crowd, no slogan, no hysteria can uproot you. Without meaning, people are pulled like leaves in the wind. With it, they are grounded like mountains. The fourth step is community. Not echo chambers, not mobs of outrage, but circles of thinkers, people who value truth more than comfort. People who can disagree without hatred, who can question without fear. One awakened mind is powerful, but many awakened minds, connected in truth, can shift the course of history. And finally, the most radical step, Prepare yourself for the possibility that true freedom is not about resisting the crowd. It is about transcending the need for a crowd at all. Because the deeper you see, the more you'll realize. Independence of thought is lonely, but it is also the highest form of strength. All along, we've been leading to this, the final escape from mass psychosis. And here it is. True freedom is not found in resisting the crowd. It is found in transcending the need for the crowd altogether. Most people cling to collective illusions because they fear being alone. They fear standing apart, fear rejection more than falsehood. And so they choose lies, because lies are shared and truth feels isolating. But the deepest root of mass psychosis is exactly this, the terror of being alone with truth. When you no longer need approval, when your sense of self is not tethered to applause or belonging, you become untouchable. No crowd can intimidate you. No propaganda can manipulate you. Kierkegaard once wrote, "The crowd is untruth." He didn't mean we should all hide away in isolation. He meant that truth is always born first in the individual, in the solitary soul that dares to stand without mirrors. To awaken in a world gone mad is not easy. It is, at times, heartbreaking. You may lose friends. You may be mocked. You may feel the loneliness of clarity. But this loneliness is not a curse. It is a rite of passage. Because once you stand in truth, you realize you were never truly alone. Across every era, others have stood here before you, quietly questioning, patiently waiting, walking the same path of awakening. And here is the great paradox. The moment you no longer need the crowd, you become the very example that awakens others. You don't need to preach. You don't need to argue. Your presence, your clarity, your refusal to be swayed becomes living proof that another way is possible. And that is what mass psychosis fears most, the individual who has remembered their own strength. And so, we return to the question we began with. You wake up one morning and see a world gone mad. People repeating what they don't understand, defending what they've never questioned, attacking those who dare to think differently. It is unsettling. It is exhausting. But it is also an opportunity. Because mass psychosis only thrives when people stay silent. It only grows when fear is greater than truth. The moment enough individuals reclaim their own clarity, the illusion begins to crumble. That power is not distant. It is not abstract. It is within you. Every time you choose awareness over distraction, reflection over reaction, truth over comfort, you weaken the spell. Yes, the path of awakening is difficult. You may lose the comfort of easy belonging. You may face ridicule or isolation. But ask yourself honestly, would you rather be comforted by lies or awakened by truth? The first will keep you safe for a time, but the second will set you free forever. The Austrian psychiatrist Viktor Frankl, who endured the horrors of the concentration camps, discovered a profound secret. Survival was not about being the strongest, but about finding meaning. Those who have a why to live, he wrote, can bear almost anyhow. That is the key. Your why must be deeper than the noise of the world, deeper than the crowd, deeper than fear itself. So I leave you with this. The world doesn't need more clever followers. It needs conscious leaders, people willing to think, to question, to stand, even when they stand alone. And that person can be you, if you choose. If this message resonates with you, share it. Speak your truth, even if your voice trembles. Because every awakening starts with a single individual willing to see clearly. And when one mind breaks free, it creates space for others to remember who they are too. The revolution we need is not one of rage, but of remembrance. Not escape, but evolution. The crowd may continue its madness, but you, if you choose, can stand in clarity. And that choice alone is the beginning of freedom. And if this message spoke to you, don't just keep it to yourself, share it. The world needs more people willing to wake up. Leave a comment with your thoughts. Give this video a like so more people can find it. And subscribe to the channel if you want to keep going deeper into truths like this. Because the more of us who choose clarity over conformity, the faster the spell of mass psychosis breaks. And remember, awakening always begins with one. Let it begin with you.